I want to talk now about a particular trader, because this is a case where I did all of these things. I'll call him Victor. And I think I helped him. He liked meeting with me. He was a very intelligent man. He had actually gone to the University of Pennsylvania. And he found it very useful. He found himself interested and sucked into talking with me about this. But then what we found is that even when we could identify the danger points, that often didn't stop him from torpedoing his success. So gradually I became convinced that something deeper was at stake, some other deeper problem with his motivation. So a little bit about Victor's background. He had grown up in a contentious relationship with his parents, whom he viewed as pretentious and formal. His father was a professor at a prestigious Ivy League university, while his mother seemed unduly preoccupied with her status as the wife of a tenured faculty member. The key event in his childhood was the family's move from a somewhat ramshackle neighborhood with a population of generally low socioeconomic status, a place his family could afford at the beginning of his father's academic career before he was tenured. They moved to a more affluent neighborhood that they felt was more suitable to an established member of the faculty. But that move, which took place, I think, when Victor was something like 12 or 13, separated Victor from many friends with whom he had played sports and hung out with, many of whom were black and working class. After the move, he went back frequently to his old neighborhood to be with his friends, to play sports with them, and so on and so forth. But the move marked a dramatic shift in his relationship with his family. Henceforth, he much more actively tried to separate himself from what he took to be his parents' pretentiousness and detachment from real life. Now, the move had really, he could tolerate it as long as he was able to go out and play, but once parents had made the move, it had gotten to him more fully. So he objected also to their lack of interest in who he really was and what he really valued. Basically, his interest in school and things like that suffered. He did go on to college, but in the first semester, he dropped out. He got involved with drink and alcohol. He got involved with a woman who was a barmaid, and school was left behind. I think obviously there was an element of rebellion against his father as a tenured professor, but I think also Victor was sort of quite lost. He had been taken away from this environment with his friends that he valued and enjoyed, and maybe he was trying to recreate that in some way. So as I think it, Victor developed the identity of a rebel in reaction to his parents' values, and also something of a daredevil who lived on the edge, courting danger in ways that appeared to him his parents never did. Eventually, he sort of smoothed things out. He got back into college, he graduated, he moved to New York, he tried several things. He did eventually got a job at the Mercantile Exchange. The job appealed to him in part because it was a place, as I said, of unpretentious, self-made men, crudely and openly competitive, who basically valued talent, and completely without the pretentiousness that he so despised in his parents. It also provided him with a lot of opportunities to court danger on a daily basis. He was very successful. In a short amount of time, he made a great deal of money. He married a beautiful European-born wife He had 3 children. He bought and moved into a lavish apartment on Fifth Avenue. And although he felt obviously some discomfort with the trappings of his success, he was a self-made man. On the other hand, feeling that he didn't somehow really belong there, he'd invite his fellow traders over to drink beer with him on the terrace of his new apartment, and they tossed the beer cans up over the edge of the terrace wall to the neighbors down below, making fun of his establishment neighbors. He wasn't completely comfortable with this new life that his self-made status had brought to him. The mix of money, European culture, crude competition, and family didn't harmonize. To the point where I came to think, as I spoke with Victor more and more about this history, which this had happened before I started working with him, it seemed as if Victor was compelled to sabotage his success. He was living a life he didn't want, a life that felt stifling and false. So a series of big losses in the market forced him to sell the apartment. Continuing losses forced him to scramble with debt and unpaid taxes. He was in deep trouble. But he had managed to cancel what had been, in effect, a repetition of his childhood move away from the old working class neighborhood. I don't think he knew he was doing that, but he was desperately, in a sense, getting himself out of a situation that felt painfully uncomfortable to him, not him. His losses restored excitement to his life, providing him with a temporary focus on survival, but it didn't suggest an alternative way to live, a new set of goals, a new definition of what a successful life might be. So it took some time in my work with him for this all to be kind of clarified, and more time for some answers to emerge. Once we saw that Victor was really, at critical moments, sabotaging his success, because basically he feared what his success would inevitably lead to, we were able to start thinking about modifying these self-destructive behaviors, his understanding of his capacity to be distracted, impulsive. He got a sort of an overview of himself that was helpful. He separated from his wife, and he began to think, with my help, about what kind of life did he actually want to lead. So if he made money, if he was successful, if he didn't have to keep sabotaging himself, what would he spend it on? What would he do with it? What would feel authentic to him? So it then gradually came to seem as if his life could coalesce around more appropriate goals that he could accept. He still continued to be impulsive. He was the same kind of guy. He liked excitement. He did like danger, but he was growing up. He wanted to make sure that he could make enough money to give some to his children to enable them to lead a more privileged sort of life, and so forth. So his various sort of motivations gradually pointed the way to a new course of action.